Mr. President, this amendment would make it easier for small businesses to better access capital in order to expand and create jobs. On November the 3rd in 2011, the House of Representatives passed a companion measure which was introduced by Representative Kevin McCarthy on a near unanimous vote of 413 to 11. 175 Democrats in the House supported this legislation. We have an opportunity here, Mr. President, to show the American people that we are serious about creating jobs and to pass this amendment here in the United States Senate. This bill would remove a regulatory roadblock. I should say this amendment would remove a regulatory roadblock in order to make it easier for small businesses to access needed capital to expand and create jobs. Current SEC registration exemption rules severely hamper the ability of small businesses to raise capital by allowing them to raise capital only from investors with whom they have a pre-existing relationship. By modernizing this rule, small businesses and startups would be able to more easily raise capital from accredited investors nationwide. According to the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council, and I quote, "This is a long overdue solution that will widen the pool of potential funders for entrepreneurs. Our economy will improve once entrepreneurs are provided the tools, opportunities, and incentives that they need to hire and invest," end quote. Earlier this month, the SEC Small Advisory Committee on Small and Emerging Companies recommended that the agency, and I quote again, "relax or modify the general solicitation prohibition as a good policy to increase the amount of capital available to small businesses." In his State of the Union address last week, President Obama called on Congress to pass legislation that will help startups and small businesses access capital in order to expand and create jobs. The President said, and I quote, "Most new jobs are created in startups and small businesses, so let's pass an agenda that helps them succeed. Tear down regulations that prevent entrepreneurs from getting the financing to grow. Both parties agree on these ideas, so let's put them in a bill and get it on my desk this year," end quote. Mr. President, this is exactly what this amendment would do, and it has support from investors and entrepreneurs alike. When you've got unemployment hovering around 9%, we need to pass legislation that will enable our job creators to expand and create jobs. As I said, Mr. President, this legislation received overwhelming bipartisan support in the House of Representatives. I hope that we can do the same here in the United States Senate by passing this amendment. Mr. President, we all talk about the importance of making it easier, making it less costly, less difficult for our small businesses and our entrepreneurs to get access to capital so that they can create jobs and get the economy growing again. And so many times these are contentious, controversial differences of opinion about how best to do that. We fight over regulations, we fight over taxes. This is something where there is broad bipartisan support, almost unanimous support in the House of Representatives, a vote of 413 to 11 in support of this legislation when it was voted on in the House of Representatives. And so we have an opportunity here to do something that's very straightforward, that is broadly supported by both Democrats and Republicans, at least it was in the House of Representatives, that the President has suggested we ought to be working on, looking for these types of approaches to freeing up access to capital for our small businesses. You've got the folks out there in the business community overwhelmingly supportive of doing away with the regulatory barrier, the regulatory obstacle that this particular regulation represents in terms of access to capital for our small businesses. So it just seems like one of those things on which there should be no disagreement, and I hope that will be the case. I hope that we can get a vote on this amendment and get this put into law and put into effect so that our small businesses and our entrepreneurs in this country can do what they do best, and that is create jobs. But they've got to have access to capital in order to do that. This makes that process easier, does away with some of these unnecessary regulations and roadblocks and barriers that exist today. So, Mr. President, I hope that my colleagues here in the Senate will support this amendment, and I yield the floor.